And we are live with our Bellator 263 post show. I'm John Pollock, along with Phil Chertok and Eric McMarcotte. Just moments after Bellator crowned a new featherweight champion, a featherweight Grand Prix winner, $1 million winner, AJ McKee. What a moment!
100%.
I think this is maybe the biggest moment in Bellator history that we just watched. Like when you look at the substance of what this means and what potentially they have in such a superstar in AJ McKee, that was incredible. I don't think you could have put together a better performance in terms of skyrocketing AJ McKee into the biggest star that Bellator has.
If you mean the biggest moment in Bellator's history in a positive sense, I agree with you 100%.
Yes, I think a positive moment in Bellator history. This certainly was. But let me just start with you, Eric, because we're going to get right into this main event. I don't know if any of us could have. It seemed like this was a fight that a lot of people, including Josh Thompson and Ryan Bader, could not make a prediction for. Like this was a very hard fight to call, and they refrained from even making picks on the desk. But that was the general sentiment all week. I did not see strong arguments either way because I think people just looked at this like there are too many different ways this fight could go.
Definitely. And with both guys having so much knockout power, creative submissions, it felt going into this like this is a fight that could end at any moment, even regardless of their skill sets of the fight playing out throughout 25 minutes. And well, that's exactly what happened, isn't it?
Yeah, like in some ways, Phil, like I tweeted about this, like I really had a flashback to Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo, not just like the featherweights, but also like what it represented taking on like the longtime star of this featherweight division. And while that fight was shorter, in many ways, it like the first, I would say, 90 seconds of this fight, it was just the two of them sizing one another up. This fight came down to pretty much a 20-second interval that was only extended because AJ McKee thought this fight was over when it was not. And this could have proved to be a fatal error for him in this fight, but then locked on that guillotine.
Yeah, it was. I mean, McKee took the center of the cage right away and clearly wanted to establish that position. But the fight was at range. I think there was like a couple of leg kicks and not much else. And then, as you said, a big burst for a few seconds after McKee lands an incredible head kick and then thinks it's over, dives on a guillotine, finishes him there. Yeah, a pretty exciting moment. And I can understand the comparison to that McGregor win.
Do you think, Eric, just looking at AJ McKee, like this, it just feels like this was a big fight. It had a lot of buzz attached to it. And this is the first time Bellator feels like they truly have a star. Like we can look at Michael Chandler and Eddie Alvarez. This feels like something different potentially.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, just the crowd reaction when he won tonight was incredible. Massive. Incredible. I think that comparison to Conor and Aldo, obviously at a much smaller scale and level than that, with that being like the biggest fighter in UFC history versus a top 5 fighter in the history of the sport. Right. But this is very much the Bellator equivalent, and AJ McKee has a ton of potential.
I think where the similarity lies is that, you know, in fight sports, you try to line things up and they don't really work out. And in this case, Showtime and Bellator set it up for the optimal result. It was for McKee to win in spectacular fashion. Not to say that they were counting Pitbull out or wouldn't be happy with him, you know, continuing to be a great champion. But just, you know, McKee is a superstar, you know, was a superstar on the verge of birth. And now here he is a superstar because of this. And I think in that regard, that's where the comparison is apt.
And you kept bringing this up, Phil. What, like, I think tonight it goes down as a very significant moment in Bellator history, but it also, to me, was the biggest proof of like this Showtime, the muscle that Showtime can provide, like all night long tonight. It just felt they were building and building towards this main event, and that capped off like weeks of promotion for this fight. And you can see like Showtime, they know how to build up big fights, and they were able to take this unique situation of the big fight getting to the finals, and how do we get it to mass interest by the scales of a Bellator? Like, it would be, we can't really compare viewership figures of Showtime, that's a subscription network, to like ESPN proper, but like, you heard that roar in this crowd. Like, that was a palpable buzz that AJ McKee has, and it just feels like this is the first truly homegrown superstar that Bellator has. And I would never have said Michael Chandler or Eddie Alvarez made it to superstar level, that it feels that AJ McKee might be on the cusp of, or just actually became tonight.
Yeah, there's definitely some fighters throughout the years that they've tried to do the push with, and to varying degrees of success. But I think this is the closest they've came to a guy who might just get to that mainstream level.
And that's 26 years old. Like, we're not talking about somebody that is, like this tail end of his career or anything. Like, this is somebody that, my God, it's just, it seems like there is so much at their disposal here with them. And not too far in the distance is the idea that was thrown out by AJ McKee this week of fighting Pitbull again at lightweight, because that is one thing that tonight, like, I think there's a novelty, a big interest in just seeing AJ McKee fight, but it is also finding those really interesting opponents. And a second Pitbull fight at lightweight, I think, just because of the shocking outcome of tonight, it would draw that interest.
Yeah, I think that's probably where they're going to go next on a match. But if that's not where they go, there's still plenty of options. You can do it again at featherweight, or we'll get
Burnell
to it later. But Mads
Burnell,
yeah,
right there.
He's right there.
What do you think, Phil? Like, what interests you? Like, how do you look at AJ McKee? Like, his next fight, it should be marketed as like this big coming out party for him after this.
Absolutely. I think you definitely need to promote him. I think a Pitbull fight at lightweight makes some sense. A fight against somebody else featured on this card makes sense as well, because it was such a successful card, I think. But you definitely have this star power potential. And the thing with Bellator is they are short on names, and Pitbull is a name. So you kind of want to maximize this while you have it available to you. And it is another belt, a chance to make him like this champ status. So I would go with that, but down the line, I'm not so sure. But it's okay if not every single fight is the most top level opponent, because this is sort of just the start of introducing him to audiences.
When you're looking at just like what is going to garner the most amount of interest, like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a guy that just won the featherweight title to do this fight next. But I think for mass interest, it is he goes up to lightweight, but before Patricio, he fights Patrici first.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And then you get Patricio afterward. Like, those to me represent the biggest fights for AJ McKee, more so than what is there at the featherweight division for him. Like, personally, I would love to see an AJ McKee Emmanuel Sanchez fight, but Emmanuel Sanchez didn't win tonight. So, I mean, Mads Burnell is one of those options. And he's going to jump up in the rankings after this win tonight. But this is, a good problem to have. But I think like the feud with the Pitbulls is probably, like, a lot of people were exposed to this fight tonight, to this promotion. And I think you do a fight with either of them next, you'll bring this audience back and maybe grow it some as well.
And Josh Thompson did suggest that in the post-fight sort of analysis there. And so it seems like, that's already in the Bellator ether.
And that is probably, Eric, I think, how Scott Coker's mind will work as well. Like, Scott Coker is, yes, I think, very savvy to this stuff and matchmaking. Like, tonight, did you get any kind of like throwback to like a big Strikeforce card? Because that's kind of, by the main event, that's what it kind of felt like. These are two legitimate non-UFC stars. And man, this crowd, it felt like San Jose in the heyday of Strikeforce for the buzz for that main event.
Well, I didn't necessarily get a throwback to Strikeforce because
Oh wait,
I
were
was
you
like
born by the time
11 when
Strikeforce?
I was like 11 when Strikeforce folded, but
Oh yeah.
but what you're saying about that being Scott Coker's kind of matchmaking strategy, 100%, yes, and it makes zero sense. Patricky is coming off of a loss to like a big cut stoppage in the second. It makes zero sense, but that's probably where they'll go to build that feud up. I can see it already.
Phil, when you're looking at Patricio, it's not a whole lot that we have to gauge from this fight, but the fact that he was submitted the first time in his career, this goes a minute 57. I mean, did you take much out of Patricio, or was this just a case of that head kick caught him and he was rocked, and that's going to happen?
I think there's more to take from that because, as I mentioned before, and as Big John mentioned in the fight, McKee took the center of the cage immediately and established himself there. He wasn't at all intimidated, and he wasn't overly aggressive in the way he approached this fight as well. So, he kind of fought optimally and beat him when they're both smaller. So, and he looked much bigger than him as well. So if they were to go up in weight, I don't really see it being too different. And the fact that that he didn't show too much is actually the one thing that makes another fight sort of hard to swallow. It's like, we didn't really see anything out of you, so how are you going to sell this next fight? Which is maybe why they do the brother first. So for Pitbull, I mean, I'm sure he wants to get it back from his view. It's probably he views it. He just got KO'd quick and jumped on the neck, but I think we see it a little bit differently than that. He's going to want to get right back at it. I don't think that's the best course of action. Take some time off and see how it plays out.
And it to me, like it really sent a loud statement when he had that moment where he thinks the fight's over. It's not. And he doesn't just go back to strikes, even though he's rocked. It's like he clamps on a guillotine to submit him, like leaving no doubt. I thought it was like, it just was like a big statement victory for AJ McKee, the entire thing.
And going on to the submission is something that backfires at times, but he just
we see that happen a lot in those situations. Yeah. I mean, it was, I was just thinking in the moment, like, my God, this is like, he had him finished, and this could be one of those where Pitbull just rocks him out of nowhere as they just start swinging. But I mean, it turned out very effective for AJ McKee. It was, to me, it was only a minute 57, but I think like this will be an all-time highlight fight for Bellator history. And it very well could be the night that they launched a superstar in AJ McKee, not overnight either. Like this was a big success of Bellator, just starting this guy from the ground up, and he had to go out. He had to win fights. They brought him along at a very careful pace. And then, as you said on Thursday, Eric, like he went through a murderer's row in this featherweight Grand Prix. Both of them did. These were significant fights for AJ McKee's maturation, and it culminated in the biggest win of his career tonight. So it was like this to me was like the biggest success of Scott Coker's Bellator era is AJ McKee.
I think that's pretty fair. These got both of them, Pitbull as well. He faced, like you said, a murderer's row. There were no easy fights to get here. So this wasn't like McKee's first big test or anything, but he still passed the flying colors. Patricio Pitbull is probably the fighter who's most synonymous with Bellator MMA at this point. I think we've been over that. So for that to be the guy he knocked out or submitted technically here to win the title, that just makes this all the more bigger.
And I'd be very cautious for anyone to write off Patricio after this. Like I would certainly not be looking at that at all, of just the way this fight played out. I think there's a lot of interest to see Patricio. Like he's 34, but I think that this is still somebody that has a lot of quality fights ahead of him.
For sure.
Well, let's chat a little bit about the other fights. So much was centered around the main event, but prior to that, I thought this was a really great fight also at featherweight between Emmanuel Sanchez and Mads Burnell. And the scores came out 30-27, 30-27, and 29-28 for Mads Burnell. And you had, what What do you think, Eric, of, this is very different from UFC, where you will have, Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier largely guessing the scores. But this is like, you have John McCarthy, who I think is very much the authority for a lot of people when it comes to scoring, and he's giving his card throughout the event. Do you like that aspect? This has always been a trait for Bellator, even when it was Jimmy Smith in that role.
I actually do like it, even when I, disagree with him or think whoever is giving the scorecard's insane. I like that they're open and honest. Morrow as well. He might not score the fights, but he's very honest about what he thinks is happening. If it's a dull fight, whatever, he will speak his mind. And I do like that about Bellator's commentary team.
I loved when the stats came up after this. He's like, damage. That's what we're looking for here. Damage. Look at all those strikes he landed.
Morrow had a lot of moments on this card. He was very funny.
Oh, dude, he had some very good lines on this. I won't go through like all the play-by-play of this, but I had it 29-28 for Sanchez. I thought he definitely won the first round. I thought the second, I think if you had flipped this around and it had been Burnell controlling the first half, and then it was Sanchez landing all his strikes in the second half of the round, I think that would have had more of an impact on people. But Burnell got that round, and I can concede that was a very close round, and I gave the third to Burnell. What was your card, Phil?
I had 1 and 2 for Sanchez and 3 for Burnell. I just found that the takedowns that Burnell was able to secure, he didn't really do much with, but in the third round, he was able to secure the position long enough that I gave it to him. But the 30-27s, like that's wild.
Like that first round to me was like, that round, Sanchez landed 46 of 125 strikes throwing. Yes, he missed a lot, but he still connected with 46 significant strikes in that opening round. So I could not agree with, I can take a 29-28 Burnell card. 30-27 to me was tough to see those two. But Eric, did you have a 30-27 for Mads Burnell?
I did not. I scored it the same way as the both of you, 29-28 for Sanchez. I think 29-28 for Burnell is completely fair. I was really struggling with that second round. But yeah, those 30-27s were something else. Hey, that being said, we jumped straight to the score, and we glossed over the fact that this was like an incredible fight. Like
it was tremendous.
The first 2 rounds these guys were fighting at. Yeah, it was incredible.
I did not watch the prelims, but of the main card fights, like that first round was the round of the night for me. It was outstanding. Just Sanchez came out, and his volume immediately was just unbelievable. And Burnell was trying to match him. And he just realized like the need for the takedowns, and he would score 7 of them throughout the course of the fight. We got the big line of this fight, Eric, was Sanchez is attacking the body like it's full of candy.
Gold.
Some great stuff here. And then the third was really, it was Burnell's round where he really mitigated the striking of Sanchez. But I mean, I was very impressed with Emmanuel Sanchez, even in defeat here. I thought he won the fight, and I thought he had a great performance. He's a super exciting featherweight who, I mean, in a weird roundabout way, it's unfortunate he was on the wrong end of this decision, because after those 2 losses to Pitbull, I mean, a strong win here for Sanchez, especially in this exciting fight. I think we would be talking more about his name in that mix of being a potential opponent for AJ McKee.
Oh yeah, Emmanuel Sanchez versus AJ McKee could be a ton of fun. But honestly, Silken Mads Burnell, this wasn't his most impressive performance, but he's a really solid fighter himself.
Usman Nurmagomedov, the cousin of Khabib, who was front and center tonight. He was cornering 3 fighters. He went 3-0 in his Bellator shirt.
A fashionable man.
Yeah, I would be very curious. I wonder if Dana White was texting him. He's like, "Hey, I've got another fight idea."
I think Khabib's probably gotten a text from Dana like every day for the past year or so.
I bet he's blocked him by now. Usman Nurmagomedov, he's undefeated, 12-0, taking on Manny Murrow, who has not lost in Bellator. He's a 34-year-old fighter with Jackson Winklejohn, and beat Nick Newell back in 2019 by split decision. So he has won his last 3 fights coming into this. And Usman just took him down. He was sneaking in shots from behind, got the full mount, then had his back in, and they get back to the feet, and Usman hits him with the knee from hell. and Murrow collapses. It was so violent the way this guy went down. Like, he was lifeless. I could have bought that it was, I knew instantly, I'm like, he either wrecked his liver or his testicles are gone. That was my immediate thought here. And the replay clearly showed completely clean knee. It was just a beautiful shot. And this dude was done. 3:30 of the first round.
He was a minus, like, what, 1,000
he was like minus 1,000 at one point this week.
So,
I mean, he was by far the biggest favorite on this show.
He lived up to those odds. He was impressive in his Bellator debut. Like, he looked really sharp on the feet, but he showed a lot more power here. Everything he landed looked hard. And from like the opening seconds of the fight, you knew how this one was going.
Phil, you weren't putting any cash down on Manny Murrow?
No, I was not putting any cash down on Manny Murrow. But really, we got to talk about Habib, on the fast track to be coach of the year along, just shortly after, retiring as number one pound for pound. Like, incredible.
Imagine he gets I don't know if he'll be able to do coach of the year this year, but I mean, he's really establishing his post-career plans. And I think anyone that has listened to him, this has always been the plan for him, was to retire and see his students surpass him and move over to a coaching role. So, I mean, it's this is like the next chapter of his career as he fields crazy ideas at 3 a.m. from Dana White via text message. Former lightweight champion Brent Primus took on Islam Mamadov. This was another lightweight fight, and they went 3 rounds here. And this is the one I am most curious about your scores, because John McCarthy scored this 29-28 for Primus, and he believed the first 2 rounds were Primus was just so active off of his back, and he was doing all of the damage, and Mamadov was being pretty much negated on top, even though he had taken him down. I agreed with John McCarthy in round 2. Round 1, I thought Mamadov did enough in this round to win, and I had Mamadov winning 29-28 overall. But this was one where I saw scores all over the place for this. It ended up with Mamadov getting the win by split decision, with one judge scoring it 29-28 for Brent Primus. But where did you fall on this one, Phil?
I had it the same way as you did. I mean, I was even torn on the second. Like, I could have had this 30-27 for Mamadov, even though, yes, Primus was active off the bottom. But if we go back to what Big John was saying, or Morrow, damage, there wasn't much damage being done off the bottom, and the control.
It was like a lot of rubber guard work he was doing. Like, I could see he was being very active, but
yes.
I mean, he never threatened with any omoplata. His Kimura was never a threat. It was to me in the second, he was landing some elbows, and Mamadov was just doing so little that I did give that round to Primus. But yeah, to your point, like, he was moving. He was the more active fighter, but I didn't see a whole lot of scoring with any kind of damage.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to be fair, he wasn't doing too much damage himself, which is what made it, hard to score. But because he just controlled the position so much and essentially established his will in that regard, I gave it to him. But I did give round 2 as well, like I said, to Primus, even though I was torn on it.
Eric, is this where you tell us you had Primus just running away with this?
I did score the fight for Primus, actually.
Okay, that's fine. Like, yeah, I think this is a worthwhile debate about scoring this, because I think you can have difficulty with some of these rounds for sure.
It was tough, though, because on one hand, you had Mamadov, who had the top position, but was doing practically nothing. He did 0 damage, threatened 0 submissions. And then you had Primus, who was trying to do things, but was unsuccessful with pretty much everything. So I had no issues with any of the scorecards. This wasn't a good fight.
Which rounds did you have for Primus?
I scored the first 2 for Primus.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, it to me wasn't a fight that really, Mamadov was making his Bellator debut here. And again, this was one of Khabib's fighters here. So another win for him. And you might be familiar with Mamadov from fighting in World Series and PFL for a number of years. where he was coming over here as well. But the main card opened up with Goichi Yamauchi and undefeated Chris Gonzalez at lightweight. And this was quite the performance here where Yamauchi got to showcase his striking skills. He came in early on and was landed an uppercut and then was mixing up his combinations, but it was a right hand that stunned Gonzalez and a follow-up that dropped him. And Yamauchi finished him with strikes at 3:53 of the first round, winning by TKO. And then he explained that the more grappling he trains, the more striking comes into play in my fights, because when I'm matched with grapplers, it cancels each other out because we respect each other's ground game. So this is like the algorithm that has led to Goichi Yamauchi, prize striker, emerging in front of our eyes as he improves to 26-5. This was his 17th fight with Bellator since 2013.
Yeah, I mean, he's won pretty much all of his fights by submission. He had only one other win in his entire career by knockout. I couldn't believe this. If anybody cashed in on
Yamauchi, what was the prop on this? First round stoppage by strikes for Goichi Yamauchi.
But it wasn't like a fluke knockout or anything. I
mean,
no. He looked really good.
Yeah, Gonzalez kept trying to get in there with some shots, but had nothing for him. It looked like there was no way for him to gain entry or get anything off. And then Yamauchi just sort of like timed it right, measured him for a bit, nailed it, and finished him clean. It was pretty impressive.
This was my favorite one of the night, Eric. The Lion sleeps tonight as Yamauchi delivers Chris the Lion Gonzalez his first professional defeat. That was just phenomenal. Nothing topped that for me tonight.
Tonight. Not the Aqua reference. Everyone was so sure you'd be. What was it?
You know what? I missed the Aqua reference, so I didn't even catch
it was
that
from
one.
The prelims. It was from the Jones fight, the Joshua Jones.
Dr. Jones.
Yes, there was a Dr. Jones reference.
Well, the prelims here, we had Brian Moore defeating Jordan Winsky by unanimous decision. Georgi Karahanyan, who has moved up to lightweight, submitting Kiefer Crosby in 4:25 of the first. Joshua Jones beat Johnny Cisneros by TKO at 4:15 of the second. Kasan Magomed Sharapov, who is the 20-year-old brother of Zabit, defeating Jonathan Kiros by TKO at 4:21 of the second. Gaji Rabadanov over Daniel Carey by knockout, and Vanessa Porto earning a split decision against Alara Joanne. Did you guys both watch the prelims? And I saw a little bit of this. I saw Rabadanov's knockout of Daniel Carey. That was very impressive, but the majority of this I did not see.
Yeah, I caught all the prelims. Rabadanov and Magomed Sharipov are probably your highlights. If you're going to go back and check anything out, those are the ones. Especially Magomed Sharipov. He looked unbelievable for his age.
Yeah, 20 years old. I mean, he's certainly somebody to watch. And with that last name, he's going to get a lot of added attention for sure. So I thought a really big night for Bellator. They also were promoting. We were kind of curious to see what would they announce. They were plugging their next card for August 13th. The countdown is on for Gegard Mousasi versus John Salter. And then the remainder of their light heavyweight Grand Prix that's going to be happening October 16th, I think is what they announced here, where it'll be Vadim Nemkov defending the light heavyweight title against Anthony Johnson. And then we've got Corey Anderson versus Ryan Bader, which led to, I guess their intention was to create a very awkward moment on the desk. They achieved that. I can't say they really added anything to this fight other than Ryan Bader, who did you really beat anyway? And Corey Anderson then talking about everyone knows ACB, and these guys are really good, including this guy I just beat. Bader's like, cool, we're going to fight in October. Okay, this was an idea. This was an idea that the producers had. I don't know if it was executed quite to perfection.
You needed a bit of Bellator, just Bellatoring on this card. It couldn't go off without a hitch. That's never how these cards go.
What do you like, Eric, about the Bellator broadcast, specifically differences from an ESPN UFC broadcast? What works, what doesn't work for you?
Oh wow, what do I like? I think I prefer everything about the UFC broadcast, in all honesty. Everything. The pacing, I like the walkouts more. I like how they fill time more even. I'm not a fan of Bellator's typical setup.
See, I thought the pacing was pretty good tonight of like the 5 fights. Like we didn't have like too much downtime in between fights, but by the end of it, I mean, it largely worked out to what, 2.5 hours for 5 fights. So it was probably on par with what you would get for maybe a little under a UFC pay-per-view length.
That's accurate, but like the gap between throughout the first 4 fights, I actually would agree the pacing was much better than the typical Bellator show. But the time in between the co-main event and the main event was just absolutely brutal for me.
We had the Tyron Woodley interview. They were promoting that for the Jake Paul fight. What's your level of interest for that, Phil?
I guess I'm slightly more interested than the Ben Askren one, or less interested. I mean, it's, I guess, right around that level. I'm not super excited about that. Like, it's not something that I'm eagerly looking forward to, because it's not like either of these guys are elite boxers. But the spectacle of it all, the fact it's another one of these Showtime events, it's on a Sunday, which is more convenient, I think, for me, for this type of thing, because I'm not invested in it. So I think it's one of those things that as the week builds for that fight, there's going to be a lot more interest, because people are just going to be talking about it. And, you know, even if it's just to have a laugh, people are going to get into it. And I think the fact that it's on Showtime, as you mentioned, you know, how good they are at promoting. And also, look, I mean, now Showtime's mixing in this Jake Paul stuff. They're mixing in their other boxing promotion, right? They're tying all of these things together. So, you know, it's kind of elevating Bellator, right? All these eyeballs on Jake Paul. So, so there is some interest there, but it's not like it's some competitive fight that I really care about the result of.
I think this is a more interesting fight than the Ben Askren fight. I think it's. I also like that this is going to be on Showtime as opposed to Triller. I don't need to go through the circus again of Triller. That was like that was a night that we all spent watching Triller. I really have no desire to revisit that format again. But I am curious to see how much interest there is for this fight compared to the last one with Askren, because in theory it's a step up from Ben Askren, and what does the staying power for Jake Paul have with his audience? So that's, I mean, it's going to be a very heavily promoted fight this month.
The fight that the type of fight that Eric loves, no doubt. I think it will be heavily promoted. I am also glad that it's not on Triller, because that was just absolutely ludicrous, and the fights that they're trying to promote, like, it's just all over the place. Like, they're going to do Oscar versus Vitor. Like, it's you don't really want to be involved with that, even though this is not like some athletic, you know, top level athletics. It's still going to be free of those bizarre musical performances, and certainly bizarre cameos from former fighters.
Just looking a bit at the UFC card, the main thing was Sean Strickland defeating Uriah Hall by unanimous decision, and Cheyenne Bays knocking out or winning by TKO with a head kick to Gloria DePaula, because this card got decimated. Rani Yahya tested positive for COVID, so that was the number 2 fight on this card, so that was lost, and this one ended up with 10 fights by the end of it. So I'm curious how many fights we'll have by next Saturday for this pay-per-view, which currently stands at 13. And that is after the loss of Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena.
Hey, 10 fights is like the perfect length for a
I
card,
agree with you. I think 10 is a perfect amount. I say this a million times. Nobody that sits through 10 fights is saying at the end, God, I wish I had 3 more fights to watch. It's a perfectly 100%. Acceptable length of fights for most people.
5 prelims, 5 main card fights. Perfect.
That's it. Take us back to 2006. It was a great time. Wait, give us prelims that we got to buy a DVD to watch 3 months down the road.
Yeah.
That's how you can see.
And don't forget about the post limbs. We need to bring those back.
Post limbs, very, very underrated promotional tactic. But let's just quickly look at the main card, at least for 265 next weekend. It'll open up with Song Yadong versus Casey Kenny at 135 pounds. They have put Tisha Torres versus Angela Hill on the pay-per-view. Michael Chiesa versus Vicente Luque. I think that's an awesome fight at welterweight. Jose Aldo versus Pedro Munoz. And of course, it all builds up to the most prestigious championship that we are going to see contested. It is the interim King of Houston championship, as Derek Lewis is going to try to become the King of Houston against non-Houston native Cyril Gane. This is the championship that is holding up this pay-per-view. So I'm so excited for the interim heavyweight title to be distributed next Saturday night, because this time next week, guys, we will have an interim heavyweight champion.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Thankfully, I've been filled with so much consternation over the future state of this heavyweight championship. What are they going to do with it? Where's it going to go? Who's the real champion? Who knows?
I mean, Francis Ngannou's just been injured for so many years now that it was time to move on.
It's been years since we've seen Francis Ngannou fight. I mean, it's you got to move on with this division. I mean, this guy that's you win this title in March. I mean, come on, it's August. Let's get that interim title in here.
Oh, you want to fight in September? Well, that doesn't work for us, brother.
That's how it works. What is the fight that stands out the most to you, Eric?
Jose Aldo and Pedro Munoz. 100%.
That should be really good. There's some good prelims as well on this. Bobby Green and Rafael Fiziev,
I think.
Fiziev, yes. Yeah. That's a good fight.
That's really good.
Yeah. So I think the top 8 fights on here are really good. It's a good card. It just, lacks a proper pay-per-view headliner.
Yes. Well, there we go, everyone. That is we are going to be back next Saturday night with a UFC 265 post show. We'll have all the breakdowns. Maybe we'll go through all the greatest interim champions in history, and we'll rank where Derek Lewis or Cyril Gane has the potential to raise their stocks.
I love that plan. I love that.
Henan Barao, his interim reign was always my favorite.
He's top tier, no doubt about it.
He's got to be top tier.
Yes, the greatest interim champion of all time.
Yeah. All right, we're going to wrap things up. Thanks to everybody for checking out the preview show this past Thursday.
Just one reminder, John, that we have this wonderful limited edition.
I'm going to tee it up, Phil. Don't worry. I'm sending
okay.
it all
I don't know. I'm sorry. You were closing the show. I was just like, I don't.
No. I was not closing the show. I was moving on to the main event, which is store.postwrestling.com, where, no word of a lie, one of the hottest starts we have ever seen to a shirt. This is the Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo of shirt sales that have just come out of the gate and just blown us away with the numbers, because AJ McKee might establish himself as a big draw. What we know today, Eric Marcotte, very much a draw.
Yes, a sincere thank you to everyone who's purchased one of these shirts. I have been blown away by your.
I want to see these showing up on broadcasts. Okay, I want to see some representation at. We'll give people a pass because of delivery, but come 266 in September, I just want to see a sea of Eric Marcotte shirts and people online freaking out that Bellator has blanketed this entire arena with shirts.
Oh yeah, an incredible design from one Dickie Bird.
Hey, we missed. Speaking of crowd behavior, this was actually noted on the broadcast at the beginning of the show. Morrow had stated that thousands of people here, because this is in Inglewood, California, where in theory there's a mask mandate for indoor events. And saying there are thousands of masked fans here in attendance, and you could see all of these people who had clearly forgotten their masks. And I guess Morrow got tons of messages about this, because later in the broadcast, he brought it up and said, I said this at the beginning of the broadcast, clearly not being enforced that much. It's like, wow, that was his Morrow just putting his foot down. And Yeah, I mean, that really does show you like the enforcement is probably not all that of, at least not for this event. It wasn't, because you could see these crowd shots, like not a whole lot of masks in California.
No, not a surprise, but very funny line from Morrow.
Yes, he did give the update. He's like, "Hey, I tried." But Phil, where can we send people for you,
Well, of course,
for Eric, for everything?
Yes. So of course, once again, you can get that shirt at store.postwrestling.com, and that's thanks to Dickie Bird. You can join the Discord, and a special announcement: we have lacked an Intercontinental champion in the Discord for some time now, and there will be a special announcement about the future of the Discord Championship, and that will be happening on Dickie Bird's Monday Twitch TV stream of his post-wrestling XCOM. And so you tune into that, everybody at Twitch TV, Dickie Bird. You can see the graphic and the dress here. And you will find out the future of the post-Discord championship at that time. So tune in then Monday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern on Twitch TV. And it's the best show on Monday nights. So tune in to find out what happens with the future of the post-wrestling Discord championship.
Wow. Is it going to be an interim championship?
No, it will not. There will not be an interim championship. I can assure everybody that there will not be an interim championship.
Yeah. When we get an interim championship for a vacant belt, that will be the day.
Yes, because you got to respect the vacancy's ability to defend a title within a certain amount of time too. Eric, what do you have going on? We will have a report up on Bellator momentarily on the site.
Yep, by tomorrow I'll have a report up on the UFC show as well. And if you tune in to Bushby and Thompson's wrestling adventure from this week, I am the featured guest, or however you want to say it, and we spend a couple hours talking about CM Punk, the Best in the World documentary from 2012, as well as the Money in the Bank match from 2011 against John Cena, his brief run in MMA, his future perhaps in AEW, and we even get in some Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington discussion.
Wow.
So check that out.
Very fitting, because after AEW sold over 10,000 tickets for the United Center on Friday, kind of forgotten about when Eric Marcotte's T-shirt sales got out there. I mean, the real draw here, Eric Marcotte. So very appropriate that you were on that show with Martin Bushby and Andrew Thompson. So go check out that show up at postwrestling.com. And breaking news, folks, Eric Marcotte is going to miss a UFC pay-per-view next Saturday. I'm stunned. Is this the first pay-per-view you have missed in years, Eric?
Yes, it is. The first I've missed since 2016, I think. But wow. I'm just going to watch it a couple hours later, so I'm not really missing it, guys.
You're going to be at the edge of your seat to find out, man, the Derek Lewis, Cyril Gane, who is the interim champion. But there are some very good fights on this card, so I'm not going to be downplaying this show. I'm looking forward to many of these fights on next weekend's card. But Phil, you will be stuck with me next Saturday night, correct? Or are you abandoning us?
No, I will be here per usual, and we'll just have to, do a dance together.
We might get a shorter card. I think we could get 5 rounds in the main event, but the rest of the card,
yeah, I mean,
we'll see. We'll see. Now that I'm looking at this, I could very well see.
Please do not put that evil out there, John.
Yeah,
no one wants to watch
Munoz
5
and
rounds
Chiesa Luque could very well go the full 3, but it's not like we have 5 or 3 5-round fights like we'll have at 266. So it's it's not just that possibility.
It's just that main event is a bit troublesome, like sort of, how that could go. But you never know. Styles make fights, and who knows how that one turns out. I'm actually looking forward to the card as a whole. As I mentioned, I think they are good fights. And so I think we'll be entertained, even if they do go the distance.
Yes, it's our latest chance for Cyril Gane to either win or lose in 60 seconds. So our elusive headline can be used, which will absolutely be used if it happens. And I'm going to give myself a window of like within the first 110 seconds, you're allowed to use Gane in 60 seconds.
Oh, we'll get it one of those days. And another chance for Jose Aldo to climb back into title contention. It's been too long since he found a title shot. Way too long.
moving back at bantamweight. All right, that's going to wrap it up for Eric, Phil. I am John. Thank you for tuning in for our Bellator 263 post show.